think so.
There it goes.
HR's here. Everyone behave.
All right, welcome to this. What? Who? It's another podcast. This is a podcast for what?
This is a podcast for not really a podcast, but more of a discussion group that we can try to figure out our shit because we're not very good at this, and the commissioner sucks.
All right. So the first thing on the list that I'm looking at is roster size.
Go down to the highlighted section. Keep going.
I don't see any highlights here.
First thing you should be which one are you looking at?
I think I'm in the wrong one.
Yeah, I sent out the Dynasty rules, and then I sent out the podcast note or the one that I had put up that I had all my notes in because I didn't feel like everybody necessarily.
Oh, I got it.
Okay, good. The first highlighted one should be the division champions. We were going from record straight to points for. I'd like to throw head to head in there because
just as a division tiebreaker.
Yeah, it'd be a division tiebreaker. I think if somebody goes 2-0, so like Andrew and Burns were both at the top of their division, they end up in a tiebreaker. I think it should go if Andrew or Burns would have won 2 straight in their division against the other opponent, they should get the tiebreaker opposed to points just because they beat the other guy twice.
I'm fine with that. If division record's still the primary tiebreaker, you're probably gonna settle it with that more often than not anyways.
Well, right. And so then, and odds are if division records their record's similar, odds are they go 1-1 and we go to points for.
Right.
But I thought if one beat the other and everything else is even, up until then we go for the 2-0 versus the points for.
I don't have a strong opinion. Anybody else?
I support that.
The motion passes because no one cares.
Well, right. That's a small thing that I wasn't worried about, but I just thought we should discuss it.
All right, I'm going to change it from orange to green in the list, Ty, so that everybody knows.
All right, you do that.
Oh, I don't have edit access.
Well, then I'll have to
consent, please.
I can't give you that while driving.
All right, stay in orange.
That's fine. I'll fix it in a couple minutes when I get to the office. All right, so shoot down.
Next one is for wild card. We're currently doing record and then points for as a tiebreaker. Do we want to ignore record and just go to straight total points scored as the wild card? So that would ensure that we get theoretically the best 4th team in the playoffs, but
So
I don't know how I feel about record not mattering.
Just for context, that would have put me at the 4th overall this year instead of Lasak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think Adrian was wild card.
That would have been it. It would have been Boyer at a worse record over Leasack, which had a better record.
I mean, Boyer should have won more games. That's my stance.
I had my chances. I lost to Colin Nolan by scoring like 65 points, and I lost to somebody else by scoring 65 points. So I had my chances. I'm not upset with record being for wild card. I'm okay with it staying points unless somebody is really into wanting the, kind of a points person who says, well, points should be the thing that matters most, then I can see it. But
it's Colin Mattoon and Colin Nolan brought it up. I know that they were both on it. Boyer, are you keeping an eye on the waiting room?
I mean, yeah, I've got my thing pulled up and it'll tell me if someone's in.
Okay, well, I just wasn't. Burns said he was hopefully going to join. I hadn't seen him come on yet.
He's on.
I'm here.
I've got it. Yeah, there he is.
Okay, maybe I just can't see him. I didn't know if that was a concern for him or not. I know Nolan and Mattoon brought it up multiple times with the max points for, or not max points for, but just total points opposed to record. I like record. I think record should be it.
Can it be record unless you're the number 1 point scorer?
Ooh, that's interesting.
I don't know how that works.
I mean, chances are if you're the number one point scorer, you're at least grabbing one of the 3 divisions, right?
Unless you're Boyer this year, and then he's
In
up.
theory, but I was second highest by a decent amount, and I still didn't make it because I botched 2 of the games I shouldn't have.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have a couple.
I've seen several times where that happens.
Your record could just be screwed.
Yeah.
Was Matt the highest points for?
I think Mattoon was.
But
No,
you-
Matt was not very high. I mean, he might have been up there, but I don't think Matt was near the top 2 or 3. I think he was down there at 4 or 5. I think for most points scored.
yeah, I think it was Mattoon, me, and then Burns, if I remember right. I'm okay with keeping it at records. Anybody else?
I would agree. I just had a couple people bring it up, so I had to put it in there. But I would think from the sounds of it, everybody seems to be good keeping it at record because you need to win games to make playoffs.
Yeah, it happens in real life all the time. A better team will miss the playoffs because they just lost a few weeks.
Thank
It
you,
happens. It sucks, but
Nolan says he's good with record too.
all right. Well, if I ever get consent from Ty, I'll change that one to green too.
All right,
I have a
I
quick.
know- I know Mattoon was strongly pushing points, but if everybody else is good on division, Mattoon is SOL on that.
Yeah.
I am not great good on that. I want my role.
I have a proposal kind of off of that. This is just going to add a little something so we can do it real quick.
Is it on the
check
list,
that.
Boyer? Because I don't think we can do things that aren't on the list.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
Uh-oh.
Real quick, considerations for extending playoffs to 6 teams. It would prevent teams
No.
from
No.
no.
I don't like it. I don't like half the league making playoffs.
Okay, well, let's just move on. Let's not waste time on it.
I mean,
So we
my only thing would be if we did the 6 teams and then not do a consolation, because we basically had you and me playing the consolation bracket. That would have been the extra 2 teams anyway.
Well, it would help prevent tanking because more teams would be in it later into the year. And you
You know
can
what,
make
one
the
thing I
2
would
wild
say
cards
about-
as top point, and you can make the 2 wild cards as top points, which gives the top point getters an extra chance to get into the playoffs.
Honestly, I think it would make tanking worse because like my team was bad, but I won enough games that I was like, I'm going to make this consolation bracket. And then I'd like to have a decent enough team to try to contend for half my money back because 8 teams have a shot at getting money because of the consolation bracket. But if the bottom half of the league's fallen off, then the bottom half of the league's playing for the first pick.
I mean, I disagree with that. I think is that as teams are closer to the number 6 spot, this number 6 spot could be close to 500, which most teams can sniff at least a few weeks before the end of the season. So I don't really see it playing out that way, but it was just something I want to throw out. And it sounds like there's a pretty resounding no from several members. So we can just move on since we got more to talk about.
Can we trade position slots?
I would love to trade a running back spot for a wide receiver spot. Anybody open for that?
All right, next thing on the list,
Okay.
draft
quick.
with 4 question marks. Tyler
Um,
doesn't know about the draft.
So the draft I was looking at would be because we did a in-person draft last time. We talked about trying to do a slow draft. Is everybody good with a slow draft? I know Colin Mattoon that's not here and Lee Sack both said slow draft's okay with them. Would everybody be good on slow drafts?
I'm good with slow draft.
Yeah, so we did test this. Me and Ty and Boyer were in a playoff fantasy thing. We did just like a 5-round draft, and it took us like 24 hours to get it done. It was pretty quick and easy. I think that it's, even if it goes super slow, we've got all summer to draft these rookies, so it's really not a bad thing.
So the only concern that I got from Mattoon is if we let it drag out too long, you start to see mini camps, you start to see other things. So I would say we start on the 12th, 2 weeks after the draft starts, which starts on a Thursday. We start on a Thursday, 2 weeks later,
Sure.
and then we end by the end of the month. That gives us 2.5, 3 weeks to draft.
Yeah, I think
Is that with the
5
4-hour
rounds.
clock on Ty?
I wouldn't necessarily put a clock on anybody because I know like Matt works construction, and if it's a busy time for him, he may not be able to get to it. If it's his pick in the morning, he may not be able to get to it till the afternoon. But I would suspect once he takes his pick, or once somebody that's busy takes the pick, I know I'm always going to be watching. I know a bunch of us are going to be. So once you hit that, you're going to hit 4 or 5 in a row, and then you may stall out for a day. But I think once we get a roll, we're gonna hit it and go. There's going to be a handful of trades that might happen, but I know everybody's been talking trades already. So I don't know that it should be that ridiculous to try to make these trades come draft time.
We need a clock. Otherwise, Colin Nolan's going to be trying to offer me the Saints 3rd round running back for my pick nonstop.
That is accurate.
I can put in, like, I would put probably an 8-hour clock on it then, just so the people that do actually work.
No, 24-hour clock on it.
24
I was
hours.
gonna say 8 or 12 hours, Ty.
Yeah, 24. That way it gives you an entire day. So, like, let's say you're gonna have an open hour at some point, no matter how busy you are. You can knock that out easily.
Yeah.
Plus, like, really, in reality, like, if it's a slow thing, you can just make your chart and then just go down in order. Like, it's not that hard.
Yeah. I think it'll go quick at times. There will be delays at times. There will be people talking trades. And if it takes 3 weeks, then it takes 3 weeks. But I mean, we can hassle people. If Colin Nolan's taking forever on his pick, we can give him a hard time because we know that guy's always talking on Facebook.
He gets to lose Marquez Callaway or Jacoby Meyer as a punishment.
I'm pretty sure he'd be fine with that at this point.
No, he couldn't trade him if we just took him away from him.
He can't trade him now.
For a reward for us.
Andy, I made you an editor,
Sweet.
I think. I don't know if you're gonna have to sign out and sign back in or not. You're still anonymous hamster. Oh, no, you weren't anonymous hamster. Somebody else was.
I got it.
All right. So as long as everybody's good slow drafting, let's plan on starting the 12th. It'll give everybody 2 weeks to figure out their shit after the draft. And then we will we'll put maybe a 24-hour clock on it to start. My thought is the first 2 rounds are going to be the trade rounds. After that, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, just take your damn guys and move on.
Yeah.
If nobody's taking a trade in the first couple attempts, just move on, really, is kind of the thought. Nobody's trading for your shit at the back end. All right, so as long as everybody's good with that. Another thing that's come up a couple times, it did come up last year in the rookie draft as well. Jeremy and Fryer didn't have enough draft spots because they were trading all their draft spots away to get 8th, 9th, 10th round guys in the startup draft, because that's what you do. You trade your what did you get, Boyer? The 110 or something like that for like a 9th round pick?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, Jeremy and Fryer were trying to figure out how this rookie thing worked. They didn't have a lot of draft capital. So they wanted to pick up a rookie that wasn't drafted. We did say originally that rookies had to be drafted to be on taxi. Sleeper does say whether or not they've been on a team. So Sleeper kind of helps track that per se. But a guy like Jacob Harris, tight end for the Rams, gets picked up late in the season, never been rostered, a rookie. Should we be allowed to put him on taxi is the question.
Right. So essentially undrafted rookies can be put on taxis.
So I told because somebody like Fryermuth, right? I have him. He moved to my starting lineup. If I drop him, Sleeper does not say whether or not they left your taxi. They say whether or not they've been on a roster. So with that, it would have to be anybody that's never been rostered. So a guy like Jake Funk, is that his first name, Jake? I don't know.
Sure, close enough.
No,
who you're talking about.
He's never been rostered. He was a rookie last year. Could have Jeremy and Fryer picked him up and thrown them on their taxi.
Yes.
Okay, and so my only stipulation to this, I don't care, I can do that. My only stipulation is that they would have had to never been on a team, because I'm not tracking once they've been dropped if they hit your starting lineup or not, because some people move, guys up to their starting lineup way prematurely and then move them back.
No, that never happened.
What's that?
That never
Look at
happens.
You
No,
can't
right.
move them back. That's in the rules. We talked about
Yeah.
that. As soon as we made the league, we said you can't move them back. It's a one-way street.
But the problem is if you pick them up off free agency, Sleeper will not let you move them to taxi. I would have to force them to taxi.
Right.
So that's where the issue came in is it comes more of a tracking issue for me. So if you're going to pick up a rookie, you need to notify me right away when you're picking them up. Sleeper will say, hey, Jeremy Fryer picked up a rookie on whatever day. So I know that they just recently picked him up. They message me, say, hey, can we move this guy to our taxi? I don't mind doing it. But if they've been picked up by multiple teams, I'm not tracking who's been on a starting roster at that point. Is that fair?
So only a guy who's never been on a roster.
Right, because like let's say a guy like Amir Smith-Marsette's on my taxi. I draft a rookie, or whatever. I have to pull him up because I have an injury and I think maybe he'll take over for Thielen. I pull him up, he never actually starts. I drop him because I need that bottom spot. He's a guy that's pretty much worthless to me at that point on the bottom of my bench.
Right.
I drop him, but nobody else knows I moved him up because I'm not notifying the league that I moved Amir Smith-Marsette off of my rookie or off of my taxi onto my starting lineup.
Sure.
And Sleeper doesn't say Tyler moved a guy from rookie or from taxi to his bench. It just says Tyler drafted him on this day.
I don't really care. I don't think it's going to matter terribly often. It's just whether or not you want to deal with the headache.
And that's why I'm saying anybody that's not been on a roster, I'm okay doing it because I can at least track that.
Yeah, that's fine.
That
Let's
works.
just do that-
Is
do it
that
way
fair?
then.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
what you're good at.
All right. I mean, that's as good as I got because me and Colin Mattoon were talking about it. And I'm not trying to track all the, well, he was picked up by this guy and dropped by this guy and picked up by this guy. And I never know where he was on the roster. Not something I really want to deal with. All right. So moving on, the next thing on the list is that Tank Fest that Boyer was talking about earlier. So the 7th and 8th place game really means nothing. Colin and Andy played in it this year. And really you weren't winning money. All you were doing was winning a worse spot.
So make it for the 4th pick, the 5th pick, the 3rd pick, whatever
So-
pick they would get.
All right. So my thought for this game is just scrapping it.
Oh, that's
So-
fine too.
So 4 teams made consolation. Underhill, Andy, Colin, and Boyer. Underhill and Boyer won the first round. They play for the 5th place game. Andy and Colin Kelly are now in with the bottom 6, and it'll go to record points for whatever the differential is at that point for the bottom. If we go to max points for, if we go to record, whatever the case would be, those bottom, whoever loses the first round of consolation just drops with the bottom 6. Instead of bottom 4 going by record, we go bottom 6. Odds are you guys are going to be better than us because you made the consolation anyway, but then it'll just go back to regular season standing at that point.
I'm fine with that. I think the only alternative would be to make the winning team get the better pick instead of the losing team, but that's just more of a headache for you. So I'm fine with just throwing them back into the pool.
So then top 6 go off championship, and 5th place game, bottom 6 go off losers of consolation bracket, and first 4 out, or bottom 4.
Works for me.
Does that work?
Yep.
All right, Andy, you got notes on that?
Yep.
Going on, we got the punishment that was implemented this year. This is going to be probably our biggest discussion point. So rule was first time not starting a guy or not starting an active lineup is a warning. Second time was a loss of 3rd round pick. 3rd time was loss of 2nd round pick. 4th time was loss of 1st round pick. I was not going to compound them on top of each other. It was just going to be worst pick. So you lose, you missed 3 times, you lose your 2nd round. I'm not going to take your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I would just take your best pick. Was how I put it in. With that, I know this year we had Colin Nolan had 2 Corey Davises prior to this that did not count because we didn't have it in place at the time. And then he had 1 after that, so he had his warning. Colin Kelly would have had 2, which would lose a 3rd rounder. I had 1 and Chris had 3, which would be a 2nd rounder. Chris left, and we all kind of discussed if a team leaves, how do we punish a new manager coming in?
You
So
don't punish a new manager.
Yeah,
Right,
there's
exactly.
no
We
reason.
and that's exactly what we talked about originally, is we're not going to punish the new manager for coming in.
Unless it's Paul.
I'm open to considering that.
We can punish
Go ahead, Colin. Kelly.
spanking. We'll spank.
Spankings. I
Ooh.
hear Paul's into that, so he'll take that
Who's giving me a spanking?
Oh, I volunteer. I volunteer.
I'd
I
get
think
mine
the
for
rest
that.
of the league, we'll just line you up and just,
Oh shoot, are we?
Well, I'll take
recording this?
turns.
Yeah, can we stop recording? Stop recording. Off the record.
So is everybody cool with that moving forward? Do we need to adjust that? Andy threw out monetary issues to maybe put in the pool for the championship. If we did that, I'd probably combine it with picks, because if we did monetary and I'm at the bottom tanking, not even tanking, I just, whatever. But I'm getting worse, but I'm also paying money. I get to the 101, but I lost $10. I get the first pick, where, okay, Colin Kelly wins the championship. He gets 10 extra bucks, but I screwed over Paul and Colin Nolan and Jeremy along the way to get from the 4th pick to the 1st pick. So me giving up $10, is it worth me going from pick 4 to pick 1? Some people may say sure, whatever. If there's a clear number 1 that you're like, damn, I have to have that guy.
Sure. So
I mean,
here's how I look at it.
Sure.
I think we're all adults. I think
Right.
we should all be playing the game we're paying to play right now. And it shouldn't be that hard to just set your damn lineup.
Agreed.
But 2, if we set up these rules, then somebody could operate within the confines of these rules and be like, well, I'm willing to lose my 3rd round pick, and I'm going to bench my lineup in 2 weeks when I'm playing, if I'm trying to get the worst pick because I was actively trying to have a bad team for part of the year. If in the week that I play Ty and the week that I play Nolan, I just bench my whole team and I'm like, take my 3rd round pick. I'm going to make sure I get these losses so that I leapfrog you guys in the standings because I want
I mean, at that
Najee
point,
instead of Pitts.
At that point, I'm kicking the manager out. Like if it gets,
Right, but
if it's
I'm
that clear and
operating
obvious,
within the rules that we just made.
and I don't care. At the end of the year, I'm gonna vote to kick your ass out.
Well,
So-
that's why I'm saying they're bad rules. If I can use my team and the rules that are written down to do that, then they're not good rules.
So Andy, here's my question.
So then we shouldn't have any rule at all, and just be
Is
adults.
10 or $20 gonna make you think not to tank though?
I don't know.
And how much does first place get when you win the league?
300.
Okay, so am I going to give up $10 in my 3rd round pick to do what Andy's doing? If you're taking the money bonus, yeah, $10 is nothing if you think that you can win $300 in 2 or 3 years because you're getting the 1-1. So I don't think we should put money into it. I don't think it matters. We put the pick place in just to show, hey, don't do this. Don't be a dick. You've got a full year now, and everyone's aware of it. Don't do it. And if you do, then we're just going to kick you out and get a manager who's willing to actually start a lineup.
So here's my other consideration on that. Instead of making it a weekly active lineup, make it a player per player. So if you miss
it
one
still
player
shouldn't
on
be
the week-
happening. Like it should not be happening intentionally.
Right, but and the hard thing is those injuries, last minute issues, which we decided are not going to shouldn't be an issue. If it's a game time decision and you miss it, I missed one because I was at church and I didn't get home in time to check my lineup. It was.
Thanks, Jesus.
Right. I think that the punishment for this should be based off of
That was the same
manager
time I went with you, Ty.
just not paying attention because of life events or whatever. Like we acknowledge that the first life event, it happens, but if it becomes chronic, then you start losing picks. If you're doing it on purpose, like what Andy's saying, then we just get you out of the league.
That's
Now-
fine.
So
And I don't think
the
it's
punishment
happening.
should just be for the little stuff. We're not going to be able to avoid if somebody wants to be a complete dick and bench all their players and say, I'm cheating the system. It's pretty obvious when that happens. We can just kick.
Sure.
And then
Well,
you're
I'm not
out
gonna lie,
$50.
with everything that happened this past year, we did a pretty good job of publicly shaming them.
I did feel good about that.
Fair enough.
So
Fair enough.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the other thing is I can get rid of the second time and drop it from the third round straight to the second round. But I feel like a second round pick is at least still valuable. Which, I mean, I guess if we're going to try to penalize somebody, you go to the valuable second rounder.
As long as you've got a freebie week to mess up because you were hungover or at church chilling with Jesus or whatever, like I'm not against that.
So,
I don't
so
care
right now
because it's not going to be an issue
warning
for me.
in third round. Is that what it is right now?
Right now, it's warning, third round, second round, first round. So you have 4 of them until you get to the first round. You get 3, then it's a first rounder.
I'll say if you want to make it,
I would drop out of the third round, go warning, second round, first round. You get 3 chances, and then at that point, I'm with Boyer. We kick him out of the league. Worse than baseball, 3 strikes,
That
you're
works
out.
for me.
I like the 3 strikes you're out rule.
What'd you say, Colin?
I second that.
All right, so we will drop the second time and we'll just drop it straight to the second rounds.
Yeah.
So we'll go warning, second round, first round.
And years from now, we won't even know what the rule is because this will never happen.
All right, so with that, give me a second.
Quick question, fellas. What if you don't have a second or third round pick in the next couple of years?
And we bump it
Then
up
I
to the
take-
next highest one.
Then I take
Yeah.
I take the closest to that. So if you don't have a second rounder, Nolan, then
Better
you're
work
losing
on
your-
trading for one. Marquez Callaway for a second round pick so I can lose it, please.
We're mortgaging your roster. You got to trade away players to get a second round pick so we can take it from you.
All right, so on that note, I do have the Colin Kelly currently out the 306. Colin, are you good with that?
What was it?
I mean, you don't really have a choice, but you had 2, which would have put you at a third rounder this year.
Yeah, that's fair.
So you're out the 306.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I get it.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you were aware that would happen. So don't trade the 306.
We're talking about area codes, and I was trying to figure out where the area code 306.
If you get a call from 306, I don't think you have to go to that one.
That is actually, I just looked it up.
Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. That's okay, cool.
That'd be a long response time.
We'll be there in 2 days.
Okay.
Hopefully it's nothing major.
So with that, we'll move on from Saskatchewan to Dynasty. The next one is defense special teams dropping. I had put a poll out there. The poll was split a little bit, and the 1 to 3 year time frame was the most popular.
Keep them.
So I know Colin Kelly and Jeremy Fryer are both on the keep them route. A lot of people have expressed that we should get rid of them due to you cannot draft defenses in the rookie draft. You can't draft. And a lot of people said if we're going to do defenses, we should switch to IDP because you can draft IDP versus just having a defensive team. But defenses are part of the game. So
are kickers. We axed those guys.
I thought if we axed one, we should have axed both, or we should have kept both. But
Yeah, but you can keep a defense on your roster like throughout the year and then into the next year, right? Like, isn't this a dynasty league?
I think it's pretty popular that if we're doing a dynasty league, it's either going to be IDP or nothing. Cause I just think defenses can get like super OP over the years. I think if we remove I personally would want to remove defenses as early as next year.
I hate you, Paul.
And I feel like if we got rid of them, I don't think we'd miss them at all.
I hate you, double, Paul.
I'm just saying.
So with getting rid of the defense, do we supplement another flex position, or how does that work?
So what I would be looking at doing is just drop, if we drop defenses, I drop defense and I drop a roster spot. So we drop a bench, we drop a defense. Is kind of what I was looking at, unless you guys think we keep the bench and just straight drop defense. But my thought is if we drop one of the bench spots with the defense, it allows for a little bit more activity on the waivers as well.
Looks like Colin Nolan is all for dropping defenses, but Colin, imagine all the terrible trades you can offer people if you keep defenses.
I have 3 defenses on my roster and did for most of the year. Never once did I talk a trade about defenses.
I know, but Colin Nolan has sent me probably 75 different terrible trade offers. Imagine that number's going to drop to 750 for defense.
Hey, he's offering Rashad Penny now. If anyone wants him, he's available too. He's a new one out there on the list.
All 3 of your best
Tempt
players.
me.
So Jeremy's the only other one that was Jeremy and Fryer were the only other ones against defenses from the sounds of it. So right now we have 10-2 vote on getting rid of them. So I don't know. Do we just agree that defenses go? Colin Kelly, you're going to hate us.
This wedding is horse shit.
Yeah, I mean, a 10-2 vote, I think would easily pass. That we get rid of.
So
It's
is
just
that
a matter of phasing them out, or
do we phase them out or do we just cut them straight?
so I say this acknowledging that I was not one that spent up for a defense, but all of the defenses people thought were going to be good last year weren't that great. So it's not like anybody's like, man, this defense is going to win me a championship next year. I don't think. And if you are thinking that, then odds are they're going to be a mediocre defense next year anyways.
Not to mention if we phase defense out, they become worthless on the trade block anyway. So you're pretty much stuck with the defense that you have for the year that we phased them out. No one's going to trade them thinking they're getting something out of them. So I would vote on just kicking them out now.
I think the only one where the defense might have actually helped somebody this past year was Lezak with Dallas defense. That might have actually.
I think Burns had the Bills, and I think that helped Burns a lot.
It did.
Thanks for the time.
I think it won me a few weeks single-handedly in the early season. So
I think
but
it's
I'm
fair
okay
to have.
either way.
Yeah, I was
I'm
gonna
not-
say.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to have the people who actually have some of those better defenses give a little more weight to this conversation. But I think if we're getting rid of them, it doesn't bother me at all to just get rid of them.
Yeah, I'm fine moving forward, getting rid of them right away. I mean, I'm indifferent. So if we keep them another year, it's fine. If we don't, I'm not going to throw a fit either way. So
I think we got majority right now.
I think Colin Kelly, like I said, Colin Kelly and Jeremy are the only ones that are against it. So, Colin, are you good if we decide to get rid of them? You're going to stay with us for a while?
I mean, I've been outvoted, so it is what it is. But even though I thought Paul was going to be on my side on this one, I feel betrayed by it. That would hurt.
No, I'm not. I'm sorry. I totally in a dynasty league. I mean, it makes no sense to have one unless we go to IDP, but.
Right. I just think you should be able to draft and adjust your players off of a draft where you can't do that with a defense. And it comes to you draft a defensive scheme and a defensive coordinator that's going to make that defense good is pretty much what you're doing is drafting and holding that coordinator.
Once we're into a dynasty league, the draft is supplemental. It's not necessary to have them on your team.
Try that again.
Once we're in a dynasty league, the draft is a supplement. It's not the key to each year. The key to each year is keeping your roster continuous. So the defense would stay continuous.
Right.
You can pick them off. The draft is just a supplement at this point.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't disagree, but.
And you should have whether or not you should be able to keep, that should be a roster spot.
I mean.
So we're axing it.
Get him, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of where everybody's at. So we can axe it now. The question is, do we get rid of a bench spot or do we leave benches as they are? They are currently at 10 bench players. We have 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 starters and then 10 bench. We had 9 starters with defense with 10 bench.
Why not just go 17 bench? Go 15 bench.
And just get rid of rookies and taxi or IR and taxi altogether.
Yeah, 10 is a huge bench.
So Colin's voting to go down a bench spot is what I'm hearing.
I'm fine to go down a bench spot, but I am expecting to be in the minority here.
See, I expected that most teams would hold a defense or 2, and if we're cutting defenses and you're holding a backup defense, you're getting rid of that bench spot anyway.
So I guess like so the whole bench thing. If like right now, I only have I have Tampa defense on my starting roster. Does that mean then I would also need to lose somebody else, one of my actual position players, since I'm not carrying an extra defense?
For sure. Yeah. But I wouldn't make you lose that until the 53-man cut when we make that final roster decision. And at that point, you're going to have 5 or 6 rookies or whatever you've got in your draft coming along. You're going to have to move taxi people around. There's going to be a lot of movement this offseason, Underhill, with bringing rookies in and having to move taxi guys up or cutting them. I mean, there's going to be guys that have to move. I don't know what your team layout looks like right now, but hold on right here. You have 2 taxi spots open and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks this year.
So yeah,
you
gonna call. I gotta go.
Okay,
Go
Colin.
Good luck.
Bye.
Be safe.
Okay. So Underhill, with that, you've got six rookie picks this year, 2 taxi spots open. So you got to find a spot for 4 of them or cut 4 of them. So at that point, we get rid of a bench spot. I mean, you've got to move a bunch of guys around regardless. Does that make sense? So I think at that point, you could drop a guy like Ingram. You could drop a guy like Bolden. You could drop one of your 3 quarterbacks. You could try to move him for just a low round pick just to get him off your roster. Jonnu Smith could probably be moved after how bad last year was, although I had high hopes for him at one point.
You don't have Jonnu Smith on your team, Ty?
I did draft him, but I cut him right away.
Oh my.
I did draft him though, don't worry. But so that, I mean, I would say drop a bench spot. Anybody else? Andy says drop a bench spot. Paul, Underhill, Boyer, Mike. I'm gonna call you Burns because I don't like calling you Mike.
My vote would be FaZe dropping a bench spot if we're gonna do it. Just if we're gonna drop the defense, I'd rather have like another year to decide it. Or I guess it all comes down to the discussion about the IR spot. If we're gonna allow out players to be in that, I guess I probably could use that as another year with that. If we're not gonna phase in that, that would just be my vote. Depending, I guess it depends how we're gonna go with the out player classification for the week.
Well, I mean, and so we can jump to that. I have no problem. I've kind of come around to whatever for out guys being on IR, I guess. Because I think that most of us are probably going to fill our IR right away, and it's not going to become an issue. I know I've had guys on IR all season because
What? No way.
I know, surprise. But I know, I think Andy had his IR filled most of the season. Colin Mattoon had his IR filled most of the season. So I mean, even if a guy was out, we still had to deal with it. So I mean, I guess if you're lucky enough not to have guys on IR, we could put an out guy on IR. I guess.
What do I do with Tom Brady?
You hold him?
Because if he's going to be back in 3 years, I'd like to have him.
Is there like a retirement facility you can put him in?
Yeah, can we have a retirement spot, please? I'd like to discuss adding a retired designation.
Can I have Andrew Luck come back on my team then, just in case he wants to come back 1 year?
Yeah, I think that ship has sailed. So if you want to stash that, that's fine with me.
Most retirement ships have sailed, Andy. I don't know what to tell you, man.
Hey, Brett Favre did it, man. I don't know.
All right, well then I'm gonna take Drew Brees then. I think he's probably the next one that's gonna come back. I'll take Sean Payton. So what's your guys' thoughts on out for IR spots? Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think
basically,
that's
there's
fine.
no designation between IR and out. If you have someone who, like Cam Akers, who's out for the season, versus me having Terry McLaurin with a concussion for the week, then he would be IR spot.
Yeah, so I think
you
in
can move
sleeper when
McLaurin for the week and snag somebody off of waivers. I mean, if it's a 1 week thing, the guy you snag off of waivers is probably not going to be starting for you because we've got 10 on our bench.
Right.
And then you're going to have to go ahead and drop that guy that you didn't want 2 weeks ago as soon as McLaurin's concussion's done. So I don't think this makes a huge difference. So I'm fine with allowing it.
Yeah, my only reason why I was saying that is if I have like a tight end that's out and I only have one tight end on my roster, I don't want
Sure.
to lose a pick or have my warning. That's really the only thing is if I have a spot open, it just gives you the flexibility. If say my only tight end for that week, who's maybe not on bye, gets injured, I can maybe pick up his replacement just for that week, start him just so I fill a full team, drop him,
That's
as soon as the next week. That's the only reason I want it. I don't plan on using it for anything else like that if I don't
I
need
think that
someone.
makes sense. That's the correct usage of the.
I think it's a Darren Waller situation all year, or Joe Mixon last year.
Yeah, that's the only reason I'm suggesting that.
Yeah.
And I've kind of come to terms with I'm okay with that, just because I think most IR spots are going to be filled, so I'm not super concerned about it. Everybody good on that?
Yep.
All right, we'll let that one slide. I'll make that adjustment. So Burns, I guess everybody Burns, you said you're good with just dropping the bench spot if we allow the outs.
Yeah, that's like I said, yeah, I know I at least have one person I can drop. So I'm not
Okay.
like I said, yeah, I'm fine with that.
Right. Paul?
I mean, I prefer not to drop a bench spot, or if we are, phase it out, but I don't feel passionate about one way or the other either way, but
Okay. I mean, I'm good saying a year or two out, or seeing how this year goes, and then maybe adjust the bench accordingly. But I think there were at least a handful of teams that have. It seems like there was a handful of teams that had at least two defenses anyway. So if you're able to hold two defenses, why not just cut that second bench spot?
right.
So
Yeah, I'm good either way. Like I don't feel passionate about one way or the other.
All right, well, let me
have to drop David Njoku.
So I'll put a poll out there for everybody else, or once they listen to this, maybe they can have an input on that. Anybody that actually listens to this tomorrow or whenever, or now, because this is when you're actually listening to it. Let me know thoughts on dropping after we drop defenses. If we want to drop a bench spot, I will throw a poll out there. And then we will settle that one coming up. So I don't think we need to finalize that necessarily now, because I'm not trying to fight over it. Plus, we're missing half the league still.
Right.
All right. So we kind of had a small debate on when we finalized rosters. We did decide via the chat, I believe, that we could hold off until like preseason when the 53-man roster comes due. So everybody good with keeping it a few weeks prior to the season. You can hold your taxi guys, hold your guys on IR, hold everything where it's at. Is everybody okay with that? The only downfall to this, Sleeper will not let you make moves with over your roster limits. And as soon as we switch from 2021 to 2022 season, it takes all of those guys off of IR and puts them to questionable, which means at this point, anybody with two guys on IR that are now questionable or healthy can't make a roster move. So you have to pull them off, or I have to go in and commission or force a drop and pickup.
Could you commissioner force a questionable guy onto Colin Nolan's IR so that he can't be doing ad drops every day of the week in February?
No, I actually tried to move a guy back to IR for Colin Mattoon because he pulled him off of IR and I couldn't do it, which is why I put Jacob Harris on taxi, because Sleeper would allow that.
Interesting. Okay.
Because he had Jacob Harris and Hopkins on his IR last week of the season, but he traded Hopkins, and I think he said he put Darrell Henderson on when he was still on IR. So he wanted me to put Henderson back on, but I couldn't track that Henderson was there. So I told him it had to be Hopkins and Harris, because that's the last trackable thing that I could find.
Mm-hmm.
And Hopkins wasn't on his team, and I couldn't move Harris back to his IR. So I moved him to the taxi and told him it has to come off of the taxi after the rookie draft before the 53-man roster, he cannot leave Harris on his taxi for the next year.
Okay. So then just to try to figure out what this is going to look like in practice, when we get to the first week of preseason and somebody gets hurt and a backup that nobody has rostered becomes valuable, then I could have first and only dibs on him if I sort my roster out 3 weeks ahead of time.
That, or if somebody messages me, I can do a force.
Okay.
So at that point, it would more or less come down to first come, first serve on a guy. And whoever texts me first gets it.
Okay. I'm just
I mean,
curious. I just figure somebody's gonna bitch if it gets down to that. So I just wanted to see what it was gonna be.
If everybody messages me, I can pull times. I mean,
Sure.
Facebook Messenger has times, so at least I have it. But so that's
because they're not available on Sleeper for us to move them ourselves.
well, if your roster is not compliant with Sleeper. So if you have guys on IR that are not on IR and you haven't moved them off because we can hold the roster, then you cannot pick up a guy. You have to be compliant with Sleeper to be able to adjust. Otherwise, I have to adjust your roster.
So is it just IR, or is the fact that we're all gonna have 17 guys on our taxi also gonna lock our rosters?
That's also going to lock your roster.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So it's going to be a mess for a while. So the only other option is saying you have to make a decision right away and fix your roster accordingly. But I don't know that that's necessarily a good thought either, because we're holding these guys hoping to see what they do in preseason.
Right, which is why I thought 53-man cuts was a good choice for final rosters, but having everything locked down in Sleeper is going to be a nightmare.
Well, the only other thing is we do the so I with the slow draft, I was actually just considering doing it on Sleeper because it'll track everything for us.
Sure.
But if we do it on Sleeper, they go automatically to your roster after the draft is over. Where if we do it off of Sleeper, I don't have to put those guys on your roster until the cut time.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So then that makes it easier, but then you're going to see guys like Treylon Burks and Breece Hall and Spiller and all these guys sitting on waivers that you got to I got to make sure nobody picks them up.
Yeah, we can fix that pretty easy.
I can go either way. As long as people aren't trying to pick up the rookies, we're fine. Which I think most of us know enough about fantasy, hopefully, that we can avoid picking up the star-studded rookies.
Yeah, just check the draft sheet and make sure that nobody took them. But whatever's easiest for you, Ty.
I would say just set a day and say, hey, don't touch rosters until so-and-so date. I'll have everything in by then, and then we go from there.
Well, but the problem is if people want to make moves, they can't make moves on Sleeper unless their roster is compliant. And as soon as the draft's over, I want people to be able to make moves. So that's the hard part. I mean, I don't want to stall people out from the end of May through August. So, I mean, it would be pretty much don't touch rookies, or I'm going to have to commission or force everything from team to team, which I don't mind because I don't think there's going to be that many moves that it's going to be that big of an issue. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I think
this is the first offseason with us drafting a new set of rookies.
Right. And rookies that'll put us over the taxi limit.
Right.
I think just play it out and deal with it as it comes and give Ty grace because we're figuring this out this year.
So do it on Sleeper and see how it plays out, or do it off of it and then know not to frickin' pick up rookies.
Is it possible? Is it possible to do the draft on Sleeper, and then after the draft is done, you take a snapshot of it or something, and then we clear it so it doesn't mess with the roster? Or
I would have to go through and redo all the trades and everything if people are trading spots and all of that.
Oh,
yeah.
Never mind.
What we could do is we could just not make the very last pick until way down the line and then just not put a timer on it and then it would sit there blank until we pick that last pick. And then technically they're not on anybody's rosters, but I don't know how Sleeper feels about that.
Yeah, we'd have to keep a lot of paper trades.
Well, I mean, I could take a picture of it right after
Sure.
everybody except for the very last person takes it. But yeah, I'd have to track all the trades and everything just in case Sleeper's like, hey, you didn't complete this draft. We're gonna delete it and you're gonna have to just start all over after 3 months of not touching it.
Right.
So it's either gonna have to be offline and nobody can pick up rookies, or we do it on Sleeper and we just have to adjust accordingly.
If it is on Sleeper, Tyler, do you think that Sleeper will just add the players to your roster and then obviously you have to manually do it, or do you think it adds to the taxi? And then if so, wouldn't it just be up to the manager's discretion whether or not to cut players or not if it's done on Sleeper and it automatically puts them on the roster?
Right, but if we don't have to cut people until the second week of preseason, you can't make a roster move to pick up a free agent until you clear all the stuff on Sleeper, which means then I have to go and enforce it anyway. But it doesn't matter where they put them on your roster. Come the 53-man cut 2 weeks prior to the season, you'll tell me who you want on your taxi squad and I'll move those guys down. Because I'm going to guess they'll put them on your bench if there's no taxi spots available. And then I'll just have to adjust it accordingly for all the teams. I don't know. I've not gotten to this point. This is really my second year doing Dynasty across the board. So I don't know how Sleeper works on this situation.
My vote's just to have it be offline, and then if we need something moved, we just get a hold of you, like you said, and we just go from there.
I mean, either way, you're probably going to have to get a hold of me, because if you got guys on IR,
Right.
you're going to have to adjust it via me anyway. So it doesn't really matter to me. Can we just table that for a little bit?
Sure.
I mean, we got a
my
month
vote
left.
is for whatever's easiest for you. So if you don't care, I'm fine to just not worry about it.
All right, let's table that for right now, and then we'll talk about that as it gets a little bit closer.
Okay.
But you guys are good finalizing 2 weeks prior, give or take, because we want to see preseason and all that, right?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. All right, so we should be good on that. So we did talk about IR guys can stay there until roster cuts. So if they're questionable or whatever, as long as they're IR'd at the end of the season and there, once you move them off, just so I have this on here and recording, once you move them off of IR, I cannot put them back on your IR. Do not ask. And also, we'll also the Nolan rule of the way too early call-ups. Don't mess. Everybody knows now, Nolan. You know now. Everybody else knows now. We don't have to make roster finalizations until right before the season. Anybody that gets pulled up off of taxi during the offseason from now on, I'm just leaving them there. There's no reason to pull them up. I will put them back if it's a trade and Sleeper forces them up. Is that fair?
I think that's good.
All right. It's in recording, so nobody can argue with me. I was gonna say it was in writing, but it's right here.
Pay attention to your roster. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
All right. So we talked about the 7th and 8th place game dropping down and being in the bottom 6. This would be the alternative. This would be what kind of messes with that game and record. Max points for the bottom 6 opposed to record. This would kind of help force people to play their best rosters. But the downfall to this is, well, I'm going to say the downfall because it does include rookies in your max points or your taxi squad in your max points for. Had you pulled your taxis up and they played in your starting lineup, they could play in your max points for. The only downfall for me to that is a guy like Trey Lance sits on the taxi all year, but plays 3 games and has a good game one of the 3 games, that counts in your max points for. Josh Palmer has a good 2 or 3 games at the end of the season, but I'm not going to pull him off my taxi to play him in 2 or 3 games that Mike Williams is out. He counts against my max points for. Some situations like that, it seems strange to me that we're going to count those taxi guys that are naturally stashes. And we're stashing them for a reason. I mean, yeah, you could have a guy like Michael Carter sit on the bench all year where he could have been a starter, but you're holding him there for tanking purposes. So, I mean, I see it both ways, but it also sucks that if you do have a guy or 2 on your taxi squad that was drafted in the 2nd, 3rd round that plays 2 or 3 solid games, but you're like, well, he's only filling in for an IR guy, but he put up 15 fantasy points and was viable for 2 straight weeks. Now I mean, it's only accounting for a small margin, but it is accounting for your starting lineup for your max points for. So does anybody have strong opinions either way about this? I know Mattoon is in favor of going to max points for. Boyer was in favor of going to max points for. He brought it up. Boyer, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, so I mean, pretty much the entire Dynasty community says max points for. If you look at the forums, and this question comes up all the time on forums, Reddit, whatever, and every single time, the overwhelming majority answer is max points for. And the reason is to prevent the thing that we had trouble with this year, and it was to prevent tanking. No matter what Colin Nolan does and starting Corey Davis 2 times in a row, doesn't matter. He's going to pick essentially the player who's going to have the most points that would have been in that position. It takes that out of the manager's hands. I don't think it's such a big issue as far as the taxi thing, Ty, that you're kind of saying, because if we didn't have taxis and we just had really big benches, then you could still play Trey Lance in one of those 3 games. You still have the opportunity to play Trey Lance, move him off of your taxi onto your bench and into your starting lineup at any point in the year. So for me, if you have that player on your taxi, it's fine that you want to stash him there just to save yourself a roster spot and lose what points he could get you throughout the year. But if he's your best player that week and you chose, I don't know, give me a bad quarterback, Case Keenum or whoever to start as your quarterback when you had Trey Lance.
Taylor Heineke.
Sure. Like whatever it is. If some bum ass quarterback is what you're picking because you want to keep the roster spot, like that's like you can do that to try and like be in the game. But when it comes to tanking, you should have played Trey Lance because he was your better option. So I don't think that's that big of an issue.
But a guy like Trey Lance situation is we knew Jimmy G was going to be the starter, but he got hurt and Trey Lance played in 3 games. Are you going to pull Trey Lance off your taxi to sit and never play another game for 1 start is my question.
I mean, well, if I'm trying to actually contend, yeah. Like if my goal is to try and win as many of these games as I can, then yeah, I'm going to pull Trey Lance over and I'm going to play him and try and get the 20 points so I can beat whoever I'm playing head to head and then put him back to my bench if I've got my normal player coming off a bye or whatever. That's generally, if you're trying to win, the answer is yes. If you're trying to play it where you're being a smart manager, you don't have a great chance to compete throughout the year, you're not in contention, you might want to keep that roster spot open so that way you can stash another young player who might play well. I get that. That's the whole point of the taxi squad. But when it comes to who has the better team, it's who has the better team, taxi your bench starters. So I'm not upset about the, Trey Lance or whatever. And you mentioned Michael Carter. Like the fact that he wasn't on a bench and actually playing throughout the year, he should have been. And a team that has a Michael Carter could say, well, I'm just not going to play him for forever and try and stash as many young guys as I want to. And that way he doesn't hurt me when I go up in these head-to-heads. It's like, no, Michael Carter should count towards your points because he was your best player available.
Right. Well, and that's why I use those 2 as an example, because one I see as a smart keep on your taxi. The other I see as we're keeping on the taxi because I don't want to win games.
Yeah, and it still is a smart keep on your taxi. Like that's what you probably should be doing if you're not in direct contention and you're scrapping for every win. But when it comes to max points for, you had a better team than whoever had less max point for. You just chose not to play that player for whatever reason. And that's fine. It's just you were still had the better roster. You still listed on your team.
Can we get back to arguing about whether or not we want this rule as opposed to whether or not taxi people matter in the implementation of this rule?
Sure. I just wanted to put it out there so everybody
Sure.
understood that they did account for it. My bad. Me and
So
Boyer will be done arguing. Boyer, we're done.
I just want to make sure that I understand this because I think I don't like it, but I just want to talk it out. So Boyer beat Colin Kelly in the first round of the playoffs to make it to the consolation championship. If he lost that game, and based on our conversation from a half an hour ago, gets tossed in with the bottom 4 because he's in the 7th, 8th place game that we now no longer do.
With the second most points in the
With
league.
the second most points in the league, Boyer now gets the number 1 pick.
No, I don't believe that that's what max points for is. Max points for is using that max points for number to determine who gets the last pick. So let's say
I was the clear bottom on points for last year.
Okay.
I would have gotten a 101.
Regardless of
so Boyer had the highest max points for. Had he lost, Boyer would be on the number 6 pick because he has the highest max points for.
Essentially,
Okay,
this
so
prevents
then I
Nolan.
think I understood it wrong. So then the max points for, and then you still give it to the worst team based on max points for.
So
Right.
the worst max
Instead of
points
record?
for. Right. Worst points for gets best pick.
So then there's no reason to tank because you're being assigned the best possible points each week in terms of your standings there.
Right. So here,
So if you win 7 games or you win 4 games, it doesn't matter. If your team sucked in terms of points, then you're going to get the number 1 pick. Okay, I'm on board for that.
So here's what it would have looked like. I had 1227 last year. I would have been the clear number 1. Paul was at 1469, over 200 points ahead of me. He would be the number 2. Colin Nolan 1520. He's a decent margin over Paul. Jared Fry was at 1528. They'd be the pick 4. So it would have been me, Paul, Colin Nolan, Fryer, Jeremy for first 4. Me, Paul, Nolan, Jared Fry.
Okay.
And then after that, it would have gone to Colin Kelly had 1538, so he'd be pick 5. Andy, you were at 1544, so you'd be pick 6.
Sure.
Boyer's max points for were 1763. So had he lost, he would have been clearly better than everybody else in that, and he would have gotten that 6th pick instead of
Right. I just misunderstood how it was being applied. I think I understand. I get it now.
So based on that scenario, then like this current year, my pick position would have been worse because I had more points scored than what I actually finished.
Oh, if you would have ended in the bottom 6. But
The top
because
6
you
is
ended in
still
the
just based on
consolation championship,
playoffs.
you're staying where you're at anyway.
Okay.
But so had you ended in that 7th, 8th place game, you would probably, because you had a good max points for Underhill, you would have probably been pick 6 instead of pick 5.
Gotcha.
So I mean, you still are ending in that 5-6 range, or 6 whatever, the 5-6 range for pick. So if you make the consolation bracket, odds are you're still going to stay in that range unless you just had an awful year and you just played bad competition every week. It's really going to be the bottom 4 teams that are going to adjust accordingly. Because like Nolan dropped below me, although I was at 1227 and he was at 1520. So he has 300 points more max on the season than me. He gets the 101. I'm at the 102 because I happen to win more games because Paul's team tanked the week and made me win.
Sure.
Chris
So
didn't
hearing
start
these
a
numbers,
guy. I won a game because Chris didn't start a guy, pushing me out of the 101 into the 102. So max points for would say, Tyler, your team still sucks the most. You still get the 101, even though somebody else didn't play a good lineup against you.
I like it. And I think including the taxi players in the calculation is fine with me. It encourages somebody like Nolan to call up Michael Carter and get him in his lineup to try to win games and make consolation.
And stay in his lineup and not go back to the taxi.
Right. And like in the Trey Lance situation that you were talking about, Ty, like the odds that the 12 points more than Kirk Cousins he got you bumps you down a spot, like that might happen, and that's going to suck when it happens, but it's not going to happen often. So I'm not super stressed about it.
Right. A guy like Trey Lance had a good week. Josh Palmer had 2 good weeks on my bench. There are a couple guys, but I mean, and they probably would have bumped up my points by a little bit.
Sure.
But yeah, it's like,
but everybody's going to get that a little bit.
Right. So, I mean, we'll all see it. So it is what it is. I just wanted to make mention of it so that people understood that those taxi guys did count in that max points for.
Yeah, I like it. I like that it encourages tanking of a roster, but not tanking of matchups. I think that's perfect.
But then we still do the penalties, like we said, for if you aren't starting players then, right? It's a combination of them both.
Yeah, I think this just really doubles down on be as competitive as you can. And if you want to field a shitty roster because you're trying to get the first pick, like do that by the way you manage your team, not by the lineup that you set.
Which is why I got rid of a guy like Debo, because I was like, well, if I'm going to lose, I'm going to get assets for Debo and tank my roster by not having the second best wide receiver on the year.
Yep.
Which might have been a bad decision in the long run, but I did it. I was going for this year.
And keep in mind, teams like this year, Nolan, Chris / Paul, and Ty, it still matters if they start their players or not, because the top guys are still vying for playoffs.
For sure.
So if Ty sits a guy against me or Lisak and we're trying to get that 4th spot, then that's going to give someone an unfair advantage just because they decided not to start a roster because they were slept in too long or whatever.
Which should penalize me for not starting a roster,
Right.
which means that's why I lose my pick.
If you're directly affecting other teams and their potential for playoffs and things, then you should be punished for it. So it would be the combination, I think, that would help solve some of our problems here.
I like it.
And that would be strictly for the bottom 6 after the 2 losers of consolation. We're good on that. Paul, you're good. Bernsey, you got a good on that. I know you're working.
Yep. Sorry, I'm good with it.
Okay. No, I just wanted a quick opinion. You're good. All right, cool. I will. Once again, anybody listening to this, go ahead and throw your opinion in if you're strongly opposed to it. But as of now, we will go to max points 4 because this seems to be a majority for the people that are here.
I also hope those people listen to this segment on 2.0 times speed.
Yeah, for sure. Good thing they didn't hear to that till afterwards.
Yeah.
All right. So money issue for Paul coming in. Money issue pick. Paul would have lost a 2nd round pick this year had he been Chris still. Colin Kelly gave the thumbs down. Paul shouldn't lose a pick. Is everybody on here in agreement? Paul should not lose picks.
Yep.
It's not his fault. Chris sucks. It's his problem, not Paul's problem.
Yep.
All right. Paul, you're good on picks. I'm not taking anything from you. I wasn't planning on it, so we're good there. All right. So going to the money issue. I will acknowledge up front that I did not collect from Chris right away. He was having financial issues. He was going through a job transition. Was having some trouble. He did pay me for the year, the $50 for last year. Was telling me he was going to get me the money as we went. Once we started running into these issues, clearly he wasn't going to pay me because we all knew he was disappearing at that point. Once he started getting called out left and right for not starting players, and this and that, we knew there was going to be an issue. So I will take full responsibility for that. With that, I've talked to people saying that I would go ahead and just deal with it at some point out of myself. And most people would agree that that's not what needs to happen. So if you think I need to pay for it, you can talk to me separately, but fuck you. And so my other opinion is everybody in the league, we have 12 teams in the league. 12 by $4 puts us at $48. Paul is willing to pay $6, which puts us at $50. If everybody pays $4, Paul pays $6. We're covered on the $50 for this year. Paul pays for next year. and we're settled up for the rest of the way. And then everybody's paying the following year moving forward. Underhill, are you good with something like that? Paying an extra $4 for the next year or two? You can pay $2 or $1 a year, whatever you want to do. Man.
Let's say I already paid you for this year. Can I get you? Yeah,
Right.
I don't care.
I mean, it's $4 over some time frame. You can throw it to me.
Got you.
Are you good with that?
Yeah.
Burnsy, would you be okay with something like that?
Yeah, that's a little steep, but I think I can. I'll tell Isaiah he can't get a Happy Meal at McDonald's next time or something.
Right.
So
Oh, it can break his heart.
That's right. That's right.
My two
See?
kids will share a Happy Meal between the two of them. That's okay.
If it only
Um,
costs me $4 to buy a better manager for a team in this league, then I will gladly pay $4 to get Chris out and Paul in. So
The stipulation is Paul doesn't make the top 4, right? That's how this works.
Yeah, well,
Lottery protected.
so actually, it was brought up in a different conversation. Colin Mattoon and I talked about this, and this was actually brought up, Underhill. If Paul were to make the top 4 and somehow turn this team that we consider like an orphan shitty team into a championship team this year, do I not pay him out and say, hey, your $50 from championship this year covers it? I mean, that would be my only other option if people are like, well, if he makes the championship, then he pays the $50. That's the only other consideration that I had brought up to me. And I had not talked to Paul about this, so you can see him kind of looking around funny, like, wait a minute.
No,
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
I
we
actually,
shouldn't punish Paul for joining our league after a shitty manager came in.
No, I
We
would
should
agree.
be appreciative to Paul. We should be giving him money.
But that was brought up by another manager. Mattoon and I talked about it, and he said, well, if Paul makes it to the championship this year, maybe he has to cover it with the winnings. Like, whatever. That would be up
pay
to
us all
Paul,
our
I guess, at this
$4
point.
back.
Right.
I don't care.
It's-
If Paul
it's
can do it,
$4.
more power to him. Paul, your team sucks.
yeah, it does.
Your team's
If
still
you need
way
a
better than
quarterback, I got a
mine.
quarterback for you.
So all right. Anyway, I will put that out there. But as long as everybody on here is good with paying the $4, Paul paying the $6, we'll get this covered and we won't have to worry about it. And if it becomes an issue, Paul will pay his dues in some form or fashion. We'll take care of it. And then I will hate all of you.
God, Tyler, do your job.
I know. So I'm trying. And then only 6 of you guys show up with me. I guess 7 because Colin Kelly was on here. I can't fault him for having to actually go save people's lives and stuff. All right. I had a couple people. I don't imagine this is going to take very long. I had a couple people bring up we shouldn't have a trade deadline because it's Dynasty. We should be able to move people around all year. I would highly disagree with that. I think the trade deadline in week 12 or 13 or whatever I had it, I believe it was week 12, is fine. Anybody else have an opinion on trade deadlines? Colin Nolan, I know this was mentioned by you. I don't know if you are alive at this point or working hard.
So it was week 12, and then we have how many weeks in the season? Essentially 17.
I think 17 counting playoffs.
Yeah, we had 15 regular season and then 2 playoffs.
I don't think
I mean,
you should make trades during playoffs, and I'm fine with the trade deadline where it's at now. You've got plenty of time to make your team the best it can be. If you can't do it by week 12, then you can't do it by week 12. Sucks.
Yeah. And I think you can make handshake agreements for after the season's done if you want, but I think the deadline serves a purpose.
Then the deadline gives a lot of fun, like last minute trades for people trying to make those last changes to the team. And I think that
that
adds
deadline's
a dimension
creepy.
of entertainment as well, just seeing trades fly throughout. So I'm very pro deadline.
So Nolan put in the chat, I just read that being able to trade throughout the year is more fun and suspenseful because you never know who's going to make trades come playoff time.
Yeah, I don't want trades during playoffs.
I would agree.
I think the only making trades during playoff time would be Colin Nolan because he's sitting at home.
He's trying to still move his best player. I would probably still be trying to make moves too because that's when you're going to get the highest price for them.
But you
Somebody
were
that's
also
like, hey, I'm going to win now. Give me Debo. I'll give you 3 first because I need to win now.
which is
But-
probably why he brought it up. And I can appreciate the attempts, but I don't think that we should be able to do that.
I would agree. Let's cut the trade deadline talk and move on. Last minute waiver requests. I know Boyer, Andy, and Paul, Jared Fry, and Colin Kelly would all. I don't know how you guys feel about it here. We did it this year. Last minute waiver request being Andy sent me a request on Saturday or Sunday morning, Saturday, I think, saying, hey, I want KJ Osborne. He picked him up and played him that week. Where Colin Mattoon reached out to me on a Saturday, said, hey, I want Jalen Guyton. When he was injured and not even playing that week, he wanted to get ahead of the waiver because it said waiver claim on Monday. And then it did change from Monday to Tuesday or Wednesday when after the Chargers had played. But I did allow Andy to do it this year because he asked about KJ Osborne. He was on waivers and not going to clear by the time the game happened. Guyton was not allowed because of he wasn't going to be able to be played. So all we were doing is trying to beat the waiver claim on that point. And at that point, I'm not waiting on 12 people to respond saying, hey, this is what I would have bet on Jalen Guyton. Because a lot of people haven't gotten to waivers if they don't need them at that point. There was a request to move it from the 2 days to 24-hour waiver, which may or may not help adjust for that. But if somebody drops somebody on Saturday, they're still not going to clear by Sunday game time. So I think we still have to have a way to claim somebody. If you drop somebody that's halfway decent on Saturday, I should still be able to have a way to claim them come Sunday game time.
Yeah, I mean, this helps prevent roster churn where you pick up all the quarterbacks on free agency and drop them to waivers where nobody can pick them up. I think that's kind of a cheap way to do something, and this helps prevent that. I think in this case, this was more of a communication issue about why we were allowing forced waivers on Saturday, and Mattoon not being part of the other league where the other, chunk of us knew why we were doing it. So I think this was a communication issue. I think it should be allowed to go on and just communicate why it's being done. And it's simple. A player should be able to be played. You shouldn't be able to drop him Saturday night and him just not have a chance to play for a fantasy team on Sunday.
Right, because the reason that this is a rule, which it's my bad for putting it on Ty to do this in the middle of the season when we had never really outlined that this was an option. So I'll own that. But the whole point of it is if there's a guy that you want to actively start in your lineup this week who is also actively not on anyone's roster, then I should be able to get access to that player who's not going to be in any other lineup this week, even if he's on waivers. And the process for doing that is sending a message to Ty saying, hey, I want KJ Osborne. I'm willing to spend 43 fab on him or whatever my number is. And then Ty will go and send a message to the rest of the league and say, hey, does anybody have any last minute waiver claims in? Figure out if they're outbidding me on the fab. And then whoever gets them. And we just process that one player early because somebody wants to play him that week.
And it should be, if you are making that waiver last minute, it should be a startable player that you are planning on putting in your lineup.
Right, because otherwise there's no reason to skip it.
Somebody like KJ Osborne, I would understand, like if Thielen was questionable and Andy had Thielen, and Andy's like, hey man, I want to pick up KJ Osborne prior to the game in case Thielen doesn't play. Thielen plays, he plays Thielen over Osborne. That's a situation where maybe that player is not going to be in the starting lineup. But
still makes sense.
It still makes sense that Andy picks him up. And so Underhill could have sent me something and said, yeah, man, I want KJ Osborne for $57. I'm going to give him to Underhill and I will take away 57 fab from Underhill and tell Andy he's shit out of luck because he didn't bid enough.
Yep.
It's the same as a waiver process. It just goes through me instead of through Sleeper. Does that make sense? Colin Nolan says, "You're welcome for dropping KJ and causing the issue." So thank you, Colin Nolan.
Thank you for that. I like him.
Underhill and Burns, since that wasn't something that necessarily may have come up in your previous leagues, you guys have any thoughts on that?
No, I'm fine with that. Is there like a time, so how long, Tyler, are you going to give people to respond? Like if Andy reaches out to you, how long is there going to be are you going to give everyone at least an hour from when you send it out? Or is there going to be just so I know how long you're going to give?
So it would, unless it is literally Sunday at 11 o'clock or 11:30, I will give you guys plenty of time to respond. If it is at 11:30 and nobody's given me any waiver claims, odds are nobody's going for them, and I'm probably just going to add it.
Okay.
But if it's a Saturday at 7 p.m., I'll give you guys till late Saturday night or Sunday morning to get back to me before I add them. But I also do need to add them at a decent time, because if Andy doesn't get Osborne, he may need to go find somebody else off of waivers. But yes, I will definitely give you more than an hour or two. I'm not going to send it out at noon on Saturday and say, all right, 12:30, Andy gets them. I will give you guys plenty of time to respond. And normally, if I don't hear from like one or two specific people, I will reach out to you again. But for the most part, when Andy did it, a good handful of people reached out and they're like, no, I don't have anybody I'm looking at right now.
Honestly, I think that I had the fab to outbid everybody except for one or two teams. So Ty didn't have to reach out to everybody because you couldn't have beat me anyways, was the scenario there.
Andy did go up to like $70 on KJ just to beat everybody out, so it wasn't an issue. He literally said, I'll beat everybody but these two. And so I reached out to those two specifically and said, hey, do you have a bid in? And they were like, no. I said, okay, cool. Andy's getting this guy for $77.
Yeah, no, that's fine with me. And I think I actually played Andy that week. And like I said, I mean, I hadn't had that happen before, but like I said, it was a Thursday night and it wasn't like I didn't have a chance to, I think I still ended up winning, but it was, at that point when you got that long touchdown, you're like, crap.
Right. Yeah. And so it would be I give everybody a chance to respond to me. And if it is 11:30, 11:45, odds are if nobody else has reached out to me, there's nobody else putting that waiver claim in.
No, yeah, I completely understand that. I just didn't know if if he reached out on a Wednesday, during the workday, are you going to finalizing in an hour on someone or wait till at least, the evening time to push it through if something?
Yeah, I'll give everybody a good handful of hours as long as I can before I make that push.
Okay. No, I'm cool with that.
Okay. Andrew and Mattoon were both on the 24-hour waiver. But I think that
at that point, what is there a difference between doing the 24 and the 2-day? If nothing else, we just go the 24-hour, and that way we make everyone happy.
But it is I don't know I don't know what it is after the drop midweek. Is it still 2 days?
Yeah, I think that's I think if we went
it's
to 24 hours, that it might make this a little bit better. But I mean, if you drop somebody to pick somebody up when waivers process on Wednesday morning or whatever it is, they're still going to clear waivers before game time unless it's a Thursday game. So it might make the issue go away a little bit, but I think keeping the rule in there and then maybe adding the 24-hour waiver solves most of the problem.
The downfall of 24-hour waiver is you've really got to be on waivers quicker, especially when it comes to after games. At the end of the weekend, I know everybody's not right on top of it and having that 2 days to really.
Well, so does the 24 hours apply to everybody, or does after kickoff, do these players still lock until Tuesday night waiver processing? And then it's just 24 hours for whoever gets dropped off a roster.
I would think that
because the Thursday players don't go to a 2-day waiver. They sit until Tuesday. So I would assume that this 2-day or 1-day waiver is only for people who get dropped.
Yeah.
And not early games.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with it because everybody gets notified. Well, I guess I can't say everybody, but Sleeper tries to notify everybody on any sort of name changes or drops or ads.
Yeah, I'm looking for how to turn that off still.
Okay. I didn't know if we could turn it off because that's why I didn't want to say everybody has notifications, but everybody has the ability to be notified if there's a drop. So I can explore that 24-hour waiver a little bit more. But would you guys be okay going to 24-hour waiver?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, that's fine. We'll say 24-hour waiver. And we are still going to allow the last minute waiver request if somebody gets dropped Saturday so that they can be picked up Sunday if it becomes a last minute issue. So we will leave both those rules in place. We will allow the 24 hours, but we will allow last minute waivers as well. Colin Nolan says you can mute notifications and choose which type of notifications you want to be muted. So Andy, good luck figuring that out.
I will try my best.
Andy, when you figure out how to mute trades coming in from Colin Nolan, let me know.
All right. So with that, Fab resets at the changeover of the season. As soon as the season rolls over to this season and we have the off season plus the regular season, I don't imagine as much Fab being used in the off season. So just leave it as when it rolls over, you get whatever $100 you get till the following year.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's
there.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's been fighting Nolan for all of these ad drops he's been making, and pretty soon all of our rosters are going to be locked super hard. So I don't think there's any need to worry about having like a separate off-season Fab or anything like that. Like if you want to blow some of it early for a guy because you really like him, that's fine. Then you just ride with $10 less in this season if that's what you want to do.
Okay. Now, I would agree. I just had to bring it up because I realized that Fab rolled over super early, and I didn't figure there was going to be any major issues with it. We talked a little bit about Colin Nolan's way too early call-ups. Don't do it. If they come off your taxi, they stay off your taxi. And then the only other thing Nolan wanted me to bring up is why I bend rules for some people, but not others. I feel like I was pretty fair. I think that really came down to the waiver request. So if there's any other big issues that you think that I've been unfair about, please reach out to me.
I know that hopefully this is not going to be an issue anymore, but who the fuck knows? I know that there was some concern with the implementing of COVID rules right before playoffs, but I mean, I appreciate that you put something in there, and I don't think it ended up coming into play, but I do feel like we needed to protect rosters somehow for any last minute scratches and weird shit happening to make sure that you could field a full lineup.
Especially since most people couldn't drop their bottom roster guys because they were so good that they didn't feel like they could drop their bottom roster guys to pick up somebody to start a lineup. Then when COVID happens, how are you going to pick up somebody?
Naturally.
You can't drop your starting COVID guy, let alone your 10th bench COVID guy to pick up a roster guy.
So I think that was the other time that came up, that you were just making rules up, but I felt like something needed to be done, and I'm glad that you addressed it.
So, and then hopefully, at this point, I don't think it should be an issue moving forward, but we're going to have to be a little fluid with it, just because if it becomes an issue, it's because and really the only time it will become an issue, I believe, is if they're really considered canceling games. And hopefully they'll give us that notice prior to Thursday so that you can make these decisions on who you'll start if Thursday gets canceled or if Sunday gets canceled. Because you're going to, if you have a guy that plays on Thursday night, now you can't put him in your starting lineup, but you have him on the COVID list and your starter on Sunday gets canceled, I will allow you to play the Thursday guy because he's on this list. So we will backlog that to Thursday. So you have that opportunity to play a Thursday guy if it comes down to it. And hopefully the NFL will come out soon enough and say, hey, there's a possibility of games being canceled this week, and then we'll all be able to get guys in a COVID list. But I don't think at this point, with everything opening up, they're going to be super concerned because a lot of these rules are being more laxed. But I don't know. I don't make these rules, so we'll just go with them as they come. So anybody else have anything else they want to address, or are we good?
When do we get to vote for a new commissioner?
Right now, you can have it sold.
Oh, I was not volunteering.
All right, I got 3 candidates, guys. I've been working a long list and doing interviews, and we'll get back to that once Tyler's off here.
All right, thanks, Nolan. Appreciate you doing extra work.
I'll leave right now. All right, well let's go ahead and wrap up. If nobody else has anything, we'll end the recording at least so that these people don't have to listen to you guys bullshit after this.